All right, how's it going, everybody? Today we're going to be doing a video on how to lay out a bowling ball. Stay tuned. Alrighty, so like I said in the little intro there, we're going to be doing a video on how to lay out bowling balls. We got two different bowling balls to lay out today. One is the Storm Absolute. One is the 900 Global Zen Gold label. And I chose these ones for a couple different reasons. I'm going to show you the importance of the P.A.P. So I'm going to be using one P.A.P. on the Absolute, one P.A.P. on the Gold label, and we're going to be doing the exact same layout, a 5x4x3. We'll talk a little bit about what those numbers mean in a minute there. But before we get into it, let's just talk about a little bit of the reason as to why I decided this ball and this ball. This is an asymmetric ball. It's got a mass bias. It's got a pin and a center of gravity, whereas this is only a center of gravity and a pin. Come to find out, the center of gravity doesn't really matter. That little middle mark there, I'll show you what those are in just a second. But yeah, that's exactly why I picked these balls. Let's get right into a little bit more explaining. Alrighty, so Absolute Zen Gold label right here. We got the pin on both balls, and then we got the center of gravity on both balls. Obviously a little bit of a different shape, but that's just a brand thing. If you grabbed a rotor grip ball, it'd be a little star. Any other brand, it'd be a little bit different as well. And then we'll flip around the Absolute here. This is your mass bias. We'll flip around the Gold label. We do not have that mass bias. So basically, when we start laying out these bowling balls here, we're going to use our compass here. For the asymmetric ball, you draw a line straight from your pin through your mass bias, and that's where you get your first two numbers there. This, the Zen Gold label without the mass bias, is going to be pinned straight through the center of gravity, and then it's 6 3/4 down on the ball here, and that's how you get that mass bias number. Because no matter what, whether you have an asymmetric or a symmetric ball, you're still going to have that mass bias measurement there. So let's get right into drawing some lines on the bowling balls, and then we'll get into talking about the layout and why we picked the numbers we did. So I mentioned before, we're using the Storm Vector layout system. 3 measurements here. The first measurement is going to be your pin to P.A.P. distance. So you're going to create an arc on the ball there, and we'll show you that in just a minute. The second measurement is going to be your mass bias to P.A.P. distance. And then your third measurement is going to be the pin buffer. And honestly, there's a lot of videos out there. Storm's got a really good 3-part video detailed on exactly how each of those work. But basically, in a nutshell, the pin and the mass bias, the core is at a 45-degree angle at 3 3/8. So just out of convention, the closer you get to 3 3/8, the more unstable the core is, and it takes more time to get the ball stabilized around the core. So when you're a shorter pin, like a 2-inch pin, 1.5-inch pin, the ball wants to start up a little earlier for you. If it's a 5-6-inch pin, even getting in a 6.5-inch pin, I wouldn't typically go as far as that. I like to stick around 5 or 5.5, but then it's really long, not a whole lot of early roll. It's not very, it's a weaker layout, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And same thing with the mass bias. The pin buffer, that third number, typically between like a 1/2 inch and 4 or 5, something like that. And basically that just determines where you're drilling into the ball, whether it be into the top of the core or the side of the core. Basically a shorter value, like a 1-2-inch pin, it stores more energy, it's a little stronger off the spot, whereas a longer value, 4, 5, something like that, is a little bit of a smoother transition. So now that we have a basic understanding of what numbers are what, we're going to get right into the drawing on the bowling balls. I'll do all my arcs, and then we'll start talking about P.A.P. and what that means. Alrighty, so we drew some lines on the bowling balls here. A couple different lines to talk about. So this was our center line that we drew from the pin to the mass bias, pin to fake mass bias here. And then from there, we got our pin to P.A.P. arc on both. We got our mass bias to P.A.P arc on both. They're down there somewhere, right there, and right there. And then we drew our pin buffer, which is just off to the side here. And then basically you draw a straight line from the edge of your pin buffer arc down straight through the intersection point, which is right there, of your P.A.P, which now we get into a little bit of a more on a personal level, because like I said in the intro, everybody's P.A.P is a little bit different. On the absolute, I'm going to put my P.A.P, which is 1¼ inch up by 4 7/8 over. And then on this one here, we're going to put 1.5 inches down by 4.5 over. So you're going to get a little, you're going to see what the exact same layout looks like on two different people's bowling balls. Like two people could have completely different P.A.Ps, and that's a really important thing to think about. A lot of people come into a pro shop, talk to their buddies, and they want a pin-up bowling ball because that's what they've thrown in the past. That's where they were messing around with their buddy's bowling ball. They want a pin-up bowling ball, but it may be completely different layout than you think. So let's get right into that, and yeah, we're gonna talk about that a little bit, and then we'll see the final result. One thing I should mention before we get into putting the hole placements and stuff is that first measurement on the P.A.P, which on the absolute is going to be 1¼ inch up. If this is the positive axis point right there, to get 1¼ inch up, we actually have to measure down. So I guess it'd be this one. We'd go 1¼ inch down. That's because that P.A.P, if it's 4 7/8 here, we're going 4 7/8 over and 1¼ inch up. So basically that measurement there is trying to get you back to the original positive axis point, not your personal point. So let's get into putting lines on it. We'll get the whole locations marked out, and then you can see how different it is between the two P.A.Ps. So yeah, let's get right into that. Alrighty, so there we are. We got 5 by 4 by 3 and 5 by 4 by 3 on two different bowling balls here. As you can see, pin placement completely different, and that is simply because of the P.A.P. Like I said, on this one we are 1.5 inch up and 4.5 over. Sorry, reverse, 1.5 inch down, 4.5 over, and this one was 1¼ inch up, 4 7/8 over, and it's the exact same layout. Simple as that. If you don't know your P.A.P, talk to your pro shop. Normally that's their responsibility anyway. It's really nice to know all your stats, kind of what you're looking at. So if you do decide you're gonna get a bowling ball and you're not in your home shop, then that's a good way of doing it. But yeah, this ball in theory is going to make, well, obviously they're two different bowling balls, but if you had this layout on this ball for two different people, this theoretically is going to be your it's going to be the same. So the 5-inch pin tends to be a little bit of a later response time. It's not going to be your most strong layout like a 3 3/8 would. That the 4-inch mass bias number, a little stronger, and that's just going to make a transition just a little quicker. And then the 3-inch pin buffer is just, it's a pretty standard pin buffer. It's not too strong, not too weak. And if you had this layout for different P.A.Ps on the same ball, then you would get theoretically the same thing. Obviously people throw the ball different. There's a bunch of different styles out there, and it's all good. It's just about knowing what is good for you and what is going to work the best for you. Let's get into wrapping up this video. All right guys, so that kind of wraps up today's video. We're going to do a little bit of a recap just because we talked about a lot of stuff, a lot of new things for some people, and I don't want to have people confused. Just plain and simple, these balls have the exact same layout on it. 5 by 4 by 3. Different P.A.Ps, which puts the pin in a different spot. Just to recap, the P.A.P is your positive axis point. That's the point in which when you release the ball, it spins. That's the axis point your ball is spinning at release. Obviously it migrates down lane and that will change, but that is your point where the axis spins on. So we did a 1.25 inch up by 4 7/8 over on the Absolute, 1.5 inch down by 4 1/2 over on the Zen Gold label. And as you can see, very different pin placements, but they're the exact same. And that's the whole point of this video, is to show you that if a pin-up ball may not be a pin-up ball to everybody. On that note, we also kind of recapped what layouts do and kind of how to do the whole thing, right? We were showing you the vector layout system. I'm probably going to come back in another video and show you the dual angle system, because this is not the only way to lay out a bowling ball. This is not the only way to do this. So on that note, we're going to end the video. Like and subscribe, comment, keep showing me all the feedback, because we're doing really well, and I want to keep doing these videos, and I want to keep doing the reviews and all that stuff. So like I said, like, subscribe, comment, bowl up a storm, and we'll see you in the next one.